I think Dr. David Gwynn come up with the term traditional rub, where we'd find multiple years of scars in the cambium where the tree tried to heal from rubbing. It's very obvious, very obvious. You don't have to go, well, I wonder if that's been used more than 1 year. That's not it. And we had some, where there's 10 or 12 rings of scars, years of scars on there, where it's tried to heal over and tried to heal over and tried to heal over. And you're on, boy, they bed over here, they feed over here. This is a traditional, and that can all change, right? Your neighbor clear cuts the place, or the farmer quits farming, or whatever it is. Habitat changes. But when you find, 15, 20-inch rubs in a line, sometime of year, that's going to be a hot spot. And that's going to be the pre-rut primarily.
Dr. Grant Woods, I really appreciate you letting us come up here and do this.
So happy y'all are here, man. I enjoy the work you do, and I enjoy sharing about what we do, so this should be fun.
Oh yeah, it's going to be super fun. Jacob, how are you?
I'm excited. Again, Grant, I keep wanting to say this Dr. Woods, but you told me to call you Grant. Been watching you for so long. I mean, I think I was telling you, I think it's close to 13 years, maybe slightly longer, that I've been watching your content. And it's cool to finally be up here at Proving Grounds #2 and kind of seeing some of your work. Because when we were driving in here, me and Andrew, we're very into seeing habitat management done to like the best scale. And it's amazing driving through here and how well developed, at least the little strips that we saw driving in here, how it lays out. So I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But Andrew, I'll let you kind of kick us off.
Yeah. So Grant, again, I keep wanting to call you Dr. Woods. I was telling you this a minute ago, watching you years ago, I heard you talk about some of the work that you did going up through college around, I guess you'd call it like scent post communication would be a technical term. Yeah. So I would like to start by talking about that. So what did you do in college, and like what's your career been?
Yeah. So I was raised here in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri. And of course in Missouri, historically, if you put corn out or baited, you went to hell. That was just a sin. It was unforgivable, right? So in these hills, you can chase acorns, and if you're an experienced hunter, when there's a few acorns, that's great. Well, you can find them, scout them, and you're gonna see deer. And when there's acorns on every tree across the hill, there's no patterning deer in timber country. So that's how I was raised hunting, and I wanted to see deer more frequently, so I started getting into scrapes. And there wasn't much known. There was a bunch of mysteries and voodoo and whatnot. And you tell me if I'm too much detail here, but I was doing this stuff, and I was sitting in trees when I got in my master's program with a notebook, just like hunting, but with a notebook and pen. Extremely inefficient. When you struggle to kill one deer a year, you don't get much data, right? And I got asked to go to Safari Club International. I still tip my hat to those guys, a Kansas City chapter, just to get, they were desperate for a speaker apparently. So I go up there. This is so long ago. I wore a tie and a sport coat and scared to death, and I give my little talk. I had the old 35 millimeter slides that we made, right? There was no PowerPoint at that time. I'm old. So we made these things. It was horrible. And I sat down, and I wasn't used to Safari Club. And there's a bunch of very wealthy people there. There were people rocks bigger than my broadhead. This was big stuff going on. And I'm sitting there, and this 10-year-old kid comes up to me and says, "My dad wants to talk to you out in the hallway." I said, "Man, I've really offended someone. This is bad." I go out there, and I met this guy named Bill Goodson, and Bill was the guy that came up with the first trail camera. I didn't even know what that word was. That wasn't the word he used. And it was like carrying your camera boxes around. It wasn't anything like you imagine today. And it was filmed, so he had 35 pictures. He said, "Hey, I like your talk. That research is kind of crude. I've been working on something for my own hunting. I'm going to send you one. Give me your address, and you just give me some feedback." That was the start of trail cameras, literally. I'm dumb as a rock. I could have made millions, got a patent, whatever, right? I thought this was a cool toy. And literally, you were so careful setting it up because you didn't want to waste one of your 36. And these were little disc cameras. If you guys are too young, probably don't know what a disc camera is, but they look like a disc, like the old Polaroid or Kodak things you would slide and see, whatever, Yosemite or whatever. It kind of looked like that, And I was working way down in the hills on public land. And then I would drive up Springfield. It was the first 1 hour photo place in the area. Springfield, Missouri, we're the home of Bass Pro. That's where I'd go up by, okay? And I mean, it'd be leaves blowing or whatever, but you get a picture of a deer. And we got a picture of a deer without being there. And that was the start of my master's work. I ended up fine-tuning the system, and I would write Mr. Goodson back and say, boy, if you change this and this, I think it'd work a little better. These were 2 camera units. They would send a beam, and when you broke the beam, it would take a picture. There was a sender and a receiver. You had to get lined up, right? This was not like today. You worked. You put someone sit down. I mean, you worked for 2 hours getting it set up to get, hopefully get a picture of a deer, literally. And I started getting pictures, and I was able to document in my thesis that button bucks use scrapes more frequently than anything. That's pretty common knowledge now. They're very curious, right? And that the overhanging limb is more important. If you cut that overhanging limb, like your brother-in-law or your buddy's hunting, he's got a hot scrape line, he's working it good, you just don't want that guy to tag another big buck. Go trim those overhanging limbs, that baby's dead. Now, you can drive a tractor through the ground part. Don't urinate in it. That just makes it more attractive, right? That's all those little boys with the pee jugs out in the woods, they're missing out on it. So I started, and does use scrapes, and they would put their mouth on that overhanging limb, and they would send and receive. Now, we can't talk to deer. So we're looking at actions and making assumptions of what's going on. And my really good friend, Dr. Carl Miller, University of Georgia, Carl and I were roommates for just a little bit. He's a genius, way smarter than I am. Probably the best deer physiologist ever to walk this planet, literally. Carl's truly a genius. I mean that truly. He did a lot of great work when I was at the University of Georgia, and before I was there and after I was there, really looking at what scents are in here and what these glands are, preorbital gland, and the verminal nasal gland, which is in the mouth and all this stuff, and analyzing that chemistry. I'm the field guy, Carl's that guy. And we really took that a lot further. But to start was those trail cameras and getting and documenting. And in 1988, I know it's like Columbus, right? 1988, I presented a paper at the Southeastern Deer Study Group, which is the premier gathering of deer biologists. Even if you're a northern biologist or Yankee biologist, whatever, that's the premier group. And I was so scared to get skin sport coat tied. And I was going to Dr. Harry Jackson, who's just a mountain in this world. Dr. Miller, of course, Carl was there, Carl Miller, and Dr. Marchington and Dave Gwynn. Some of these just icons of the deer research world were there. And I presented this paper showing these crude disc camera pictures of deer in scrapes. And in hindsight, and these are all friends of mine, but in hindsight, University of Georgia, when I went to next, did not want me. They wanted those cameras because you couldn't go shelf and buy these. Mr. Goodson had built me, I think it was 6 at the time. I had 6. And I thought, boy, they want me on something good. They didn't want me. They wanted those cameras. Went to Georgia and started working on big rubs, like signpost rubs. You said that word are big rubs. I mean, some of these rubs are big enough you put your climbing tree stand in. Big rubs. In the South, this was actually on a plantation in South Carolina. You will know this plantation. You won't know it by name, but it's actually where they filmed a big portion of the movie Forrest Gump. Yep. And when they started filming the movie, it really messed up deer behavior. But anyway, and I was studying these great big rubs, primarily sassafras trees. Deer like rubbing on trees that are aromatic. And you go, why is that? Doesn't that compete with the pheromones, external hormones they're putting on there? Well, if you think about it, why does a lady, hopefully a lady, wear a bunch of perfume? It's not to cover their scent. Hopefully they don't have BO or something like that. It's to bring a little attention to them, right? And so if you're going through the woods, and again, we can't talk to deer, so there's some assumptions in here. And you see something that's got a real colorful underbark. If you shave the bark off a big sassafras tree, it is crimson tigers, orange. It just shows in the woods like a stop sign. Hey, you need to come here. And it has a smell. Deer can smell that probably much farther than the pheromones. And pheromones are very volatile. You ever noticed a buck going through the woods? If you've had experience, you're hunting during the rut and you saw some does come through, maybe a buck comes perpendicular to that trail. And they'll take a step or two this way and a step or two that way. Everyone I've talked to, everyone I've seen, and I spend a lifetime in the woods, the deer, the buck, always go the way the does are going. Always. And Dr. Miller, again, Carl found through some of his brilliant work there at the University of Georgia, that scent is so volatile. It volatilizes so rapidly that within a few steps this way or that way, he can tell it's older here. It's newer here. They're going that way. And to me, that's God's way of saying, well, deer would go the wrong way half the time and waste all this energy. They need to go the right way, or it's a total waste of energy. If you're going the wrong way, like, if the dance is over here at Applebee's and you go to Chili's, you've wasted the night, right? So they got to go the right way. So I'm probably way off the map here, but that's how we got started. And then I got with Dr. Larry Marchington, who's still alive, just, Brent and Dr. Miller and Dr. David Gwynn. And instead of a hunter like I started using really good research and refining our techniques and how we were doing our field work and able to publish and produce much better research on scrapes and rubs.
Man, there's a lot there. And we had Carl Miller on last year about deer vision, and he blew our minds. And our listeners loved it. I mean, he's next level. Oh,
he's like 3 levels up, right? I mean, Carl's a genius. Carl could do crazy things all night long and make an A in any class. I mean, he speaks French. I mean, he is so smart. Super nice guy. I mean this all with love, truly.
Oh, yeah.
But Carl is next level understanding mentally, like an Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And Carl's a great hunter too, but a lot of us are just, deer hunters that got into science part of it. Carl has the brains to really put it all together and do that vision work and all the chemistry. Like, for example, I remember when I was there, when Carl started doing some of this work with the scents, we would store them in liquid nitrogen. That's 196 below zero. You might have, if you've been around cattle or something, they store sperm in liquid nitrogen to preserve it, right? Okay, 196 below zero Fahrenheit. It would not volatilize deer scent. It would not keep it from volatilizing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't mean anything mean, but I'm very candid. So you go buy X at Stuff Mart. That's been there 3 years, and they mark it down to $9.99 to find it off shelf. Well, and that may attract a deer. Deer are very curious, but it doesn't smell like Betty Lou. Because that's a level of their skill set, olfactory skill set. They're making a living every day with that noise to avoid predators. They're not like us. Like, pizza's on, man. They're at a whole different level. And they're smelling the individual compounds in there. That's why when hunters get so excited about scent control and this, that, and I'm like, yeah, that's awesome, man. Which way's the wind blowing? Because they're not smelling what we're trying to cover up with. They're smelling every compound. Every compound. And I mean, those compounds may not alert deer, so you may get away with some stuff. But we're respirating. We're breathing out. We're putting these warm, moist molecules that carry scent like crazy. And the wind whips this way and that way, sticks of stuff out there. That's where we get that scent tone from. I'm so down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
No,
I love it. I'm here for it. This is fantastic. Going back to the scrapes and rubs. So back then, what were you studying with scrapes? What were you trying to figure out?
Well, we didn't know except for some hunter observations. I mean, trail cameras weren't a thing. We didn't really know who made these things, who used them. Did the same buck repeat? Was this marking a territory? Because that's what everyone thought. Oh, this is marking that old buck's territory. We didn't know, and deer are not territory at all. We know now that scrapes don't mark territory at all. They're just like the old phone booth. Hey, I'm here. I'm pretty fit. I'd like a date. Are you around? That's what we're communicating. It's all about fitness and communication. Mm-hmm. So predators are very territorial. You always see coyote scat on roads or coon scat on roads. They're probably using that road to mark the edge of their boundary. Deer are not territorial. They're territorial twice a year. Does would be very territorial about their prime fawning area. The best doe, most fit doe in the area is probably got the best fawning area in that area. And the wimpiest doe, she may be fawning in your backyard. Okay? And bucks are territorial about a 30-yard circle around a receptive doe. And you see that another buck creeps in about 30 yards, they bristle up, and they may or may not go to a fight. Fights can be dangerous. Someone can get injured. They try to avoid that. But 100 yards away, they're not territorial. They don't care less. So scrapes are not marking territory. There's communication.
Okay. So one of the things, when I was doing some research for this, I was trying to look up some articles that were talking about your research. And one of the things that I kept seeing over and over again, and I would just like for you to elaborate on this, you kept getting quoted saying that you had like a 2 foot wide scrape that had more, I think it was more mature buck visits than an 8 foot wide scrape.
Yeah, size of scrape is not correlated to the number of visits. And I don't know, this is again an assumption, but it seems to me I love finding a big old, what I call car hood scrape, man. I mean, things as big as an old Cadillac, it gets me excited. It seems like probably some button bucks with some deer just got really excited, started pawing away, they're all amped up. But that does not mean you're gonna see more deer there. And I hunt scrapes at a certain part of the pre-rut. Otherwise, they're just scouting information for me. Deer are traveling this direction. They're traveling this way. I say a line of scrapes are traveling this way. It may or may not be a good place to hunt. And we got to remember, this is a phone booth. This is a communication point. And to receive communication for deer, it's usually olfactory. That baby's whiffing. Do you want to be hunting in a place where they're keyed up with their nose? You really want to put your stand where that nose is working overtime. Maybe yes, maybe no. In a great pinch point, there's a river behind you, the wind's sucking to the river all the time. Might be a great place. But just the average scrape on a ridge may not be the best place for you to hang a stand.
Interesting. So one of the reasons that I was really excited to have this conversation is not only your background and research, but also what you've done with the proving grounds, which is your property, and all the consulting you've done over the years, looking at other people's properties. And when it comes to scrapes, I'm sure you've seen every scenario in the book when it comes to scrapes. Is there anything about one scrape versus another where you're like, oh, this scrape is good, this scrape is kind of what you're talking about, like not really worth hunting?
I probably look at it a little differently. Watch that scrape in relation to the habitat and the airflow from a hunting point of view. A scrape against just a communication tool. There's going to be hundreds or thousands on any given property, depending on the size of the property. Where's the scrape where I can approach, hunt, and exit without alerting deer? And deer don't have great fidelity to any individual scrape that we can tell with GPS collars and their stuff like that. So size of the scrape, I'm looking at, was that scrape used last year, the year before? If I'm a property owner or I'm hunting public land, I hunt the same place over and over. Does it have a pedigree, a history of being used over and over? That tells me something good's going on. Is there a rub line and a scrape line running together? That's a really good sign for me. So it's not just a bunch of button bucks running through there. But what's most important for me, even here on my place, can I find scrapes that are fresh, that are where I can approach, hunt, and exit? Everyone always forgets the exit. Deer have memory. Right? It's like, oh, or I love this one. Hey, it's going to rain. I'm going to go scout right before it rains. Well, unless it's a toad strangler, that water just makes our scent even more prominent. And it doesn't wash the memory out of a deer. You're alerting deer just because it rains. And, oh, I forgot that. It rained. I don't know. I didn't know Grant was out here walking around. So just the biggest thing I found where I try to help people, when you're a hunter, you need to think like a deer. Stop thinking like a hunter. Think like a deer. And I think it all becomes very easier to put together if you do that. Mm-hmm. So my things for a scrape is I want it, ideally, a rub line there, a history, multiple years that's opened up. That's a travel corridor deer like to use, okay? They're coming and going somewhere. And I can approach, hunt, and exit without alerting deer. That's a great scrape location that I will hunt.
Right. And over the years on the podcast, we've said this, a couple of guests have brought this up, that when you're thinking about scrapes, I just wanted to throw this out there and get your thoughts on it. When you're thinking about scrapes, you have to remember that the scrape is there because of the deer aren't there because of the scrape.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So, and I've had it, there's actually a piece of public that I hunt in Alabama. It's big upland hardwoods, kind of like this property is. And man, we found some of those car hood scrapes. I mean, from me to you, yeah. I mean, almost, some of them are like half the size of this room. I mean, giant, stinking scrapes.
Yeah.
Put cameras on them 2 years in a row in the rut. I mean, they were lit up with bucks. Last year during the rut, we hardly had, I don't know if we had a shooter in there last year. I mean, it was
You said
rough.
something, I want to interrupt you here. Mm-hmm. During the rut, is that a casual term? Was it during the pre-rut or rut?
It was during the pre-rut.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, as before, peak breeding in that place is probably right around January 1st, and this would be basically from December 1st to Christmas.
Yes.
They had heavy use.
So you know, when we're getting ready for prom, we call it, hey man, you got date, you got your tux, whatever, and there's a bunch of excitement. The night of the prom, none of that matters. Well, in deer terms, the pre-rut's getting ready for prom. Everybody's running around, and how I define as a biologist a pre-rut, there's a maximum of 25% of the does receptive. There's way fewer does receptive than bucks wanting a date. So those bucks are in a frenzy. There's a lot of competition. Man, they're just running. Boy, it's Betty Lou over here. You know, what's going on? They're just moving. Once over 25% of the does are receptive, the dance has started. All the actions on the dance floor, i.e. all the actions with that receptive doe. And now you're just looking for a receptive doe. You're not advertising. You're not asking for a date. You've already got your tux. I mean, all that's over. You're just going with the wind to a receptive doe, or you're cruising doe bedding areas or whatever it is. So scrapes and rubs are pre-rut and post-rut. Please don't forget post-rut. And if you have a tuned up deer herd where the management side comes in, and those female fawns, depending on where you are, north, south, whatever, getting 60 plus pounds. They start reaching puberty at about 60 plus pounds. Again, depending on where you are. I would be a little bit heavier, okay? Coastal Barrier Island, Mississippi, be a lot. They don't weigh 60 pounds as an adult half the time, right? So you gotta. I know y'all have a huge audience. You gotta, put this to where you live, and where you hunt. But we love here hunting the post rut because we have really good habitat. A lot of our does female fawns become receptive. And when they become receptive, those female fawns late season are going to a food source every day, back and forth. They haven't been through the rut yet. They don't know how bad boys are. Mom has not warned them. They haven't had, this is, they're a freshman going to the prom. No one warned them about those nasty senior boys, those mature bucks. And they're going to a food source back and forth every day, and they're dragging those mature bucks with them. And that is, if you've got the best food in the neighborhood during the late season, which we work hard to do, and you have healthy female fawns, that's very exciting hunting. It's very predictable hunting.
More big bucks probably get killed on clear cuts than anything else, especially when it comes to hunting in the southeast. And back behind me, I've got a really good example of what makes a good spot in a clear cut. So there's two main ingredients you want to look for. You want to look for low spots, and you want to look for habitat diversity. Right here behind me, I've got both of those. We've got this more fresh cut. It's just got some grasses and some saplings in it, but enough that a deer's probably going to feel hidden in it. They're going to want to be in it. And then this hill rolls off, and back behind me over here, we've got a pine thicket. And right there in that lowest spot, this clear cut meets that pine thicket, which is perfect. So I've got my two key ingredients meeting right in the same spot. That's how I can look at this clear cut that's over 100 acres, and I can narrow it down to the spot within the spot. One challenging thing about hunting these spots that you got to watch out for is you could have a deer pop out at 50 yards, but you could also have one pop out at 450. For that reason, I like carrying a pair of range-finding binoculars. These are the brand new Ranger 3000s from Vortex. They've got great glass, they've got a great price point, they're thin and they're lightweight, they fit my bino harness just perfect. The reason I like carrying a pair of range-finding binoculars is so I don't have to fumble with two separate objects, like get my binos up, see at the shooter, and then try to get the rangefinder out. I can do all that at the same time with these, which is going to save me valuable seconds. And if you've hunted something like this, you know that a few seconds can literally completely make or break your hunt. So if you want to check out the Ranger HD 3000s from Vortex, go to eurooptic.com, use the promo code Southern10. It's going to get you a discount on these binoculars or any other optics from Vortex. So y'all go to eurooptic.com, use that code Southern10. It's going to get you a discount on any Vortex products. One thing we talk about with almost every guest on this show is map scouting. My favorite map scouting tool is LiDAR. If you're unfamiliar, LiDAR is basically like a 3D scan of the Earth's surface. I like to say it kind of takes away all the surprises. LiDAR is now available on OnX Hunt on their topography map. If you go to your app right now, click on the topography map, you can flip on that LiDAR feature and boom, it's gonna come on and you're gonna see what I'm talking about. The LiDAR is gonna allow you to see things that are normally hidden from view. This might be ditches, bends in creeks, rocks, old road beds. I personally love old road beds because deer like to walk them. They're great places to find scrapes. They're great camera locations. And before, an old road bed or an old logging road might be something that you kind of happen upon while you're out scouting or hunting. Well, now with the LiDAR, before I go into an area, I can turn on that LiDAR and I can see exactly where those roadbeds are. Even old logging roads from the 1930s, you can still see them on there. So that allows me to go straight to those spots and check them out. It's just an incredibly helpful tool, and it's available now on OnX Hunt. And hey, if you want to get 20% off your OnX Elite membership, you can use the promo code SOUTHERN. Like I said, it's going to save you 20%. Go check out that LiDAR feature. You'll be glad you did. Know where you stand with OnX Hunt.
There's more of you guys getting into saddle hunting than ever before, and a common question we always get is how do you get comfortable in a saddle? Because there's so many moving parts. And today I'm gonna give you 3 of the best tips that I have for getting comfortable in the saddle after doing this for about 8.5 years. Number 1 is tether height. Setting your tether at the right height is going to give you extreme comfort, but this is one big reason why you need to practice with it. I like mine right at nose level when I'm standing on the platform. The other is your bridge length. Having an adjustable bridge on your saddle makes it extremely comfortable to fine-tune that comfort, and I like mine extended out almost all the way. The third is how you sit in your saddle. Some people like the saddle sitting just below the belt line, which I've done in some saddles in the past. That made it more comfortable. Some are right at the belt line, and some are a little bit above the belt line. Now, having a very comfortable saddle makes it really easy to do all this stuff with less adjustment. And the Lone Star saddle from Latitude Outdoors is that saddle for me personally. I really like this saddle, and I really like the hip pinch reduction system that's built into the saddle that gives me a lot more comfort all day long with less adjustments needed. If you want to check out the Lone Star saddle from Latitude Outdoors, you can go to latitudeoutdoors.com for more information. Over the years, we've interviewed quite a few successful ground hunters when it comes to bow hunting, and the commonalities between all of them is using the shadows to their advantage. Having overhead cover, back cover, and a little bit of front cover that adds a little bit more shadows to their setup, which allows them to hide a lot easier. That's what we've done today and built this brush blind for Andrew to come in here with his recurve and shoot some does, hopefully early season when these white oaks behind the camera are going to be dropping. One important thing about blending in the shadows is having something that works camel wise in the shadows, and that's one thing I like about this Mossy Oak Woodsman leaf jacket is it's a little bit darker in color, and to me blends in a little bit better to the shadows during early season when you have full leaves on those trees. This is something I'm going to keep in my backpack all season because it's really compact, it's really lightweight, and breathes really well, and I really won't need it until I need it, but it's going to be in my backpack the whole time, which is really nice because of how compact it is. So if you're interested in ground hunting a little bit this year or having extra concealment up in the tree, check out the Mossy Oak Woodsman Leaf Jacket at mossyoak.com.
Now, speaking of that first 25% of does coming in, another thing that I read that I can't remember if it was a quote or what, but it had to do with what you were calling traditional rubs, those big, giant historical rubs. Yeah. And that I read some quote that said when mature bucks hit those, it's around the first conception date. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so again, there's just enough scent in the air. Just enough to get everyone amped up. That rut's coming, the promise coming. And so that's when they're still on a pattern, food cover. And those big traditional rubs are going to be on that pattern. Once we get past 25%, they're not on the pattern. That's when bucks expand their home range, get out of home range. Those of us with GPS collars are back in the day, radio collars are out there at the Yagi antennas. Where the heck is this thing? It's been here, for last 4 months. I could walk this, find it here. It's not here anymore. Everything changes during that time. And if I was going on now to state hunt, I didn't know the area, I'd probably want to go during the rut. I'm just counting on deer moving more steps per hour during the daylight. Late pre-rut, early rut. If I'm hunting at home and I got to take vacation, I'd 99% rather take it during the pre-rut than the rut. Because the rut, those bucks are not on a pattern. They're unpredictable. Your brother-in-law who can't hunt, only hunts once a year, goes to Walmart and buys their own size bullets every year, that kind of guy, And he kills the biggest buck on the property running through a fescue pasture at noon. That's what the rut is, folks. There's no predictability. If you're a serious hunter, it's all about the pre-rut or the post-rut.
Yeah. Going back to rubs again. So one thing that you hear growing up, especially a ton, is like, oh, this is where he's marking. This is his line, his territory. Yeah. So that's not true at all.
Just a travel corridor. Probably we had bucks, does, button bucks, female fawns, all using those rubs.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what are the does doing with the rubs?
They're sniffed to get information out there, and we had a few pictures where they backed up to it.
Really?
Remember, there's a lot of scent glands on a doe.
So when it comes to, well, just explain the traditional rub for us again.
Yeah.
Like, what would you define as some people call it a signpost, some people call it historical, some people call it traditional. What is it?
I give my friend Joe Hamilton, who started the QDMA, Joe's actually going to be here in a week or two. He started a newsletter before there was a magazine and all that other stuff called The Signpost. And he got that, I think, maybe for some European deer researchers or something like that. But signpost is a long used term in biology where signposts can be carnivores. It's just where they leave scent. It's a signpost based on scent. And then a traditional rub, I think Dr. David Gwynn came up with the term traditional rub, where we'd find multiple years of scars in the cambium where the tree tried to heal from rubbing. It's very obvious, very obvious. You don't have to go, well, I wonder if that's been used more than 1 year. That's not it. And we had some, where there's 10 or 12 rings of scars, years of scars on there, where it's tried to heal over and tried to heal over and tried to heal over. And you're on, boy, they bed over here, they feed over here. This is a traditional, and that can all change, right? Your neighbor clear cuts the place, or the farmer quits farming, or whatever it is. Habitat changes. But when you find, 15, 20-inch rubs in a line, sometime a year, that's going to be a hot spot. And that's going to be the pre-rut primarily. But yeah.
One quick question. You were seeing 10 to 12 years of rings of scarring on that tree.
Yeah.
Were y'all flush cutting those trees? And
I shouldn't have said rings. I knew when I said that's wrong. These will usually be linear scars.
Okay.
Where the trees tried to heal over the wound. Trees try to heal a wound. You've seen this. Logging equipment, whatever, knocks the bark off a tree and it'll grow an odd looking shape, heal over it. It's almost like a tree Band-Aid, right? Well, when you see multiple of those, the tree keeps trying. Every year they rub that off and keeps trying. It'll get big and gnarly, and you can actually feel it. We're not cutting it. You can feel the difference.
Okay. Okay. I was wondering. Okay. Also, when it comes to the information that y'all have learned or you learned early on with these traditional rubs and scrapes, especially when we're talking about rubs, do rubs mean anything more to you other than a buck's frequenting this area? Like, it's not something that you're going to hunt or anything else that comes to data?
And again, I'm in the Ozarks where there's not much of a pattern on deer until late season. But if I'm in an area, like, for example, you've got a bean field in the bottom and a thicket on top where someone harvested some timber and there's just a line of big rubs going back and forth, that's a big time travel corridor. And here's a point I think a lot of people forget, because I've kind of dodged where I'm hunting and whatnot a little bit here. Where there's the most sign is usually a place I don't want to hunt. Everyone their eyes just blew up, folks. Where there's the most sign. I mean, you go in there and it's just deer pellets everywhere and it smells like a deer. They obviously feel very comfortable there. It's probably a place where the wind is swirling all the time, or there's some reason they're super comfortable, and I can't be there when they're there. I want to hunt transition zones. That's where deer are taking a little bit of a risk. Boy, I'm super comfy in my bedding area. I got to go get food. I expose myself to danger, certain portions of that travel corridor, not all of it, but there's going to be a weak spot. I got to cross this highway. I got to cross something to get over there. I'm looking for those weak spots. Where is it in my favor the most as a predator?
Interesting. And so are you, just one last thing on the traditional rubs.
Yeah.
So what is the utility of a traditional rub for a deer hunter? Like if you're going to go out and find them, or maybe you know where some are, what can you take from that to your
There's mature bucks in the area. Mm-hmm. We have pictures of, again, button bucks and spikes all over these 20-inch, trees that are rubbed. 20 inches is a lot, folks. We have no evidence of them ever establishing or creating that. If I see a lot of traditional rubs, it tells me a lot of them on a property, there's a good age structure of bucks in that area. That's first thing, and that's where I want to hunt, right? If you're a buck hunter, you want to hunt those older bucks. It tells me deer are traveling this area year after year. Those are my two big takeaways from a hunting point of view.
And I'm guessing a lack of those traditional rubs doesn't make you feel great about where you're at?
And I find in some areas you just don't see a lot of traditional rubs. Now remember, we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's stitch it back together a little bit. Deer prefer aromatic trees. You're in an oak hickory forest, there's not a lot of great trees to make traditional rubs on.
That's a very good point. Because at home, we see it. You said sassafras here. We see it with cedars back in Alabama.
We don't have many big sassafras here. We see it on cedars. We have just a couple of pine trees. I'll tell you funny. So I married a Southern girl. I went to Georgia and Clemson and ended up marrying a Southern belle while I was down there. Shipped her to the Ozarks, put her in culture shock. And so she loves pine trees. There are 2 pine trees on this property, and there was one. Used to be shortleaf pine. This was native pine, here was shortleaf pine. They were logged off back in the day, all gone, right? There was one on the Proving Grounds, one. And when I first found it, I was like, my wife's gonna be so happy, this is great. And we were gonna do it was about an 8-inch tree and looked pretty healthy. And there was a bunch of brush right around it. We're gonna do a prescribed fire in that area. I said, you know what? Just for my wife, I'm gonna take some, I would never do this any other way. I'm gonna cut all this brush, blow the leaves away from it, just so pines are so fire resistant, but just so there's no chance I damage this with prescribed fire. I'm gonna clear it out around it. And I tell her, get some brownie points, it's all good. The next fall, bucks killed that tree by rubbing on it.
Oh my God.
I don't mean they injured, they killed it. That baby browned up, yeah.
Really?
Because it was the best signpost tree on that ridge and they couldn't get to it. And all of a sudden I gave them access. I mean, it was thick around it. And I give them access and they girdled that tree. Deep girdled it. It's hard to kill a pine tree, folks. They girdled that rascal.
Wow.
Yeah, she hasn't forgiven me yet.
She's like, go kill them bugs.
The times I've found any kind of rubs that you're describing, these traditional rubs, has been on pine trees. And also we have in some areas a lot of beech trees down south in some of these big bottoms. And you'll find a huge beech tree that is just destroyed. I've never noticed it having any kind of stronger odor or smell to it from aromatics.
Beech is a little weaker, but it has more than like an oak tree.
Yeah.
Oak doesn't have, you don't see you might see a little oak sapling by the edge of a field or something rubbed on, but you don't see a lot of oak trees rubbed on. Mm-hmm. Cedars are common, sassafras, fruit trees. I mean, if you're a person that plants peach, pear, plum, whatever trees in your yard, you've got them babies fenced or deer are gonna rub them. Because fruit trees are very aromatic, and you've got to protect those or bucks will scar them up.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad we brought that up because some of the bigger woods areas that we hunt, whether it be, I mean, just really anywhere, like up and down the southeast, where there's a lack of those aromatic trees, a lot of times you just don't find the rubs, and you're walking through there and you're like, man, like why is there not? But you'll find the scrapes in those places.
So David Gwynn and Dr. Gwynn, Dr. Marson, and Carl were doing some early on research and a plantation 17 miles out of Charleston, South Carolina, many years ago. They were pioneers in that part of the Southeast of harvesting does and letting bucks get no to age. That's common now, but that was heresy to think of back in the day. I mean, just heresy. And they were publishing and doing some cool work, and they started noticing these giant rubs. They were not there before they got that age structure going. On big sassafras trees. This had been a rice plantation back day, old rice ditches, cotton mouths everywhere, because I was doing my work there, that kind of stuff. And sassafras are a weed species. They're one of the first to invade an area that's been heavily disturbed, like a big farming operation. They're a weed species. Like ragweed is one of the first to grow up when you disc up your yard or something like that, right? And so I had these new cameras as a, newfangled grass student. And I gave this paper at the deer study group, and I said, man, we got to get that down here, which was a blessing to me. And we got to get those cameras on these trees and see what's using them. What is going on here? That's really how this all got going. And it was life-changing for me, and we published some good work out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is novel. It's just boring work now because time moves on, right? Like Orville Wright was amazing, but Elon's sending giant rockets up in space. I mean, time moves on, and it's all common. And I guess I may seem a little lackadaisical about the rubs now, but I've learned that, man, give me a high-oak food plot or a big white oak that's dropping in an area I can approach hunting next without alerting deer, and I'll take that 9 days out of 10 over any rub line you show me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to cover the sign aspect before we got into the second part of what I wanted to talk to you about, which is stand placement and figuring out those spots. Did you? I've
got a lot on that.
Okay, good. So going back to one thing you said earlier, you don't like to hunt where there's a high concentration of sign. You like to go find those transition areas. how do you like to go about doing that? Are you finding the heavy concentration of sign and then working back from there? Which I know it might be a little different because you're manipulating properties, but just what's your general thoughts on that?
Well, in general, early season deer going food cover, food cover. So you can whip out whatever your favorite mapping app is and figure out generally where the food cover is. This is pre-acorn fall. So they're going somewhere where herbaceous plants are growing. Forbs, food plots, crop fields, whatever, right? Been a fire, been a clear cut, whatever that is. And so you're finding those and going, well, in general, here's my line through there. Now, the deer won't be on that straight shortest path, almost never. It'd be easy if they were, but okay, once you get there, you start drifting back and forth and up and down. Well, there's a creek, where they crossing the creek, or, there's a road, or whatever it is. You start just really thinking it through. It's a lot of boot leather, but it's even more mental process. It's that chess game. And then you can start putting in trail cameras to narrow that down. And there's a trade-off there. Trail cameras are awesome tools. I love them. I've got more than I need to know, more than my wife needs to know. But you can put too many trail cameras out there because that's disturbance, right? It's a plastic smell. It's a battery smell. You're going in, even with cell cameras, you got to move them, reposition them, whatever. So I'm pro that, very pro that. Love cell cameras. Love them, love them, love them. But you got to find that right balance. These big mature bucks are sensitive. They did not, this is a cliche, but they did not get that way by making bad mistakes. And they're not quite as alert in the early season. The reason is that testosterone level is not near as high. When that testosterone gets jacked up, that baby's like a Navy SEAL. Like right now, we had a great picture the other day. One of my fellow workers here was just driving it where you drive by that big food plot up there and took a beautiful picture. Just, cell phone. Sometimes it just works out. This is a postable picture, a publishable picture of a saddleback. I call really mature bucks saddlebacks. That back is just dipping. He probably won't have that big antlers this year. This buck is obviously really mature, obviously really smart because he's outsmarted me for years. Obviously a super intelligent buck. I'm teasing here. And he's standing out in the middle of the field in daylight. That's not going to happen during hunting season. There's no chance that's going to happen. Now, there is a cycle. If bucks live old enough, they can get senile. Like, it's usually easier to hunt an 8-year-old buck than it is a prime 4-year-old buck because they're not on their game as much, just like older guys aren't on their game as much. I don't talk about that much because how many people get a chance to hunt senile bucks? Where are you seeing a lot of 8-year-old bucks, right? That's just not going to happen a lot.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on as we're kind of transitioning, I wanted to learn more about how you like to set stand locations up to have success. And one thing you mentioned early on in this episode or this interview is access to and from the stand, especially the importance of getting out of that stand without alerting deer. Yeah. And you mentioned that in regards to scrapes. Can you walk us through your process of if you find an area, maybe it's not like necessarily a pre-hung set, or maybe it is, but it's an area that you think at a certain point of the year you're going to have a lot of success. Walk us through the process of how you pick out your entrance and also your exit route to give you the most success so you can hunt a spot a couple times and not just burn it on the first sit.
Yeah. I want to say one fact. I won't say this a lot today, but this is a fact, okay? Hunting pressure is when you alert deer or they know you're there. You can hunt the same stand 100 days in a row. And if they don't know you're there, it's a 0 to them. People get this wrong. Well, I've hunted there 3 days, I got to move. And we don't always know when we're alerting deer. They smell you 200 yards away. You probably don't know they're there if you're in any kind of timber thick country, right? They just quietly went around you and you're, oh man, I didn't see anything today. But hunting pressure is what alerts deer in the context we're talking about now. So I'm very cautious of how I approach hunting exit to make sure I'm not alerting deer, which means I'm probably not going into the hinterlands. I'm not walking a half mile to my stand. I'm going to cross too many trails, the wind's going to swirl, I'm leaving scent. I would rather Daniel or one of the guys here drop me off at the base of my stand in at UTV, and I'm not lazy. I walk a lot. I would rather that UTV and the gas smell or whatever we're on our property, we're on UTVs every day, working, checking traps, spending on time of year, prescribed fire. We're on here all the time. If you're a golfer, you know that you see deer on a lot of golf courses. You can't really get them out of the way, right? You're aiming at them to get them to move out of the way. Whatever deer are accustomed to and they don't associate with danger doesn't matter. We're on our property all the time working with UTVs. We never shoot a deer out of UTV or anything like that. They could care less. So I want to be, if I can be dropped off where I step from UTV to the stand, that's ideal. I never put my foot on the ground. That doesn't happen much in the Ozarks, but I would prefer that. And then getting out, I hope someone, my wife, whoever, drives out there and picks me up. If I'm in a good area, there may be deer in the area. That's one reason I like transition zones. I want the deer to go by me. I see something I want to shoot. I harvest. I miss. Whatever happens, they keep going. Because if you're hunting right over a food plot, which I love food plots, that early season you're hunting right over a food plot, and they get there right at dark, and you know you've seen all the guys that are coyote howling, or I know one guy, he's crazy. He's got one of those big robo trucks. He hides in the bushes. And right at dark, if he's got a bunch of does or something out there and he didn't want to alert them because he got no one to pick him up, he pulls out his remote and drives the truck out there towards the deer. Highly effective. I don't want to pack the thing in the woods, but highly effective. Yeah. So I've said it so many times, but I work to only hunt stands I can approach, hunt, and exit, even though it may not be the best set. And I'm hunting peripheries. During the early rut, I'll go right in the thick of it because the bucks are mindless. Mindless. So that's the only time I'm penetrating those bedding areas, you know, which are great. In Missouri here, our gun season usually is right over the peak of the rut. The day that the most does are bred is usually November 13. This is based on conception date data, looking at fetuses. You know, you measure crown to rump. I have actually a scale right over there, but you lay the fetus on a scale. You've already harvested doe. This isn't sad. You've already harvested doe. Might as well get some data. Take the fetus out, lay it on there, crown to rump, and you measure it, and you can backdate to when that doe was bred. It's pretty doggone. It's not 100%, but it's pretty doggone accurate. Similar to humans. You have a 2-year-old. I'm sure you went to a doctor. Your wife got an ultrasound and said, you need to be home during these couple of days because this is when this baby's being born. Mm-hmm. We're backdating to date of conception. And that's because deer have a gestation period of about 200 days. It doesn't vary much. That's why this works. So during the rut, I'll risk it all because the deer are mindless. Does are not, so you can't be alerting the does. But during the pre-rut, pre-rut, which means they're just feeding and eating, pre-rut and post-rut, I'm on my guard. And I'm approaching my sets, and I like to set, my stand selection is almost always going to be on high ground. 5% of this property is ridgetop. 95% of deer we kill on ridgetops. That's not because they spend 90% of their time there. That's just because where we hunt, because on a ridge top, the wind is going to be stable. There's nothing deflecting it. It's going or being sucked downhill by thermals or whatever. In a valley, that air is going everywhere. We hunt valleys during one condition, really cold days. That's going to stay cold till 10, 11 in the morning, something like that. Usually mornings is when we hunt valleys. Really, really cold days. Because cold air sinks, that our scent is going down the creek, down the valley. And we can count on that not changing.
I know you've worked with a lot of clients through consulting who may not have the capacity of someone picking them up or dropping them off.
Yeah.
In circumstances like that, is there anything else that goes through your mind for entrance and exit routes that they need to consider?
Again, the best thing you can do is hunt a transition zone so the deer are not there when you're walking in the morning or walking out at night. Mornings are much tougher. I'm an early morning person. I'm up early every day, but morning stands are so tough because, again, I think a lot of hunters they think like humans instead of deer. Morning is evening. Morning for us is evening for deer. They've been, quote unquote, working all day and they're going home. They may get a snack on the way home, but they're going home. All right? So they're all moving in the morning and we're moving trying to get to our stand. Really good chance those two collide, unintentionally. Evenings hunts, if we're doing our homework, they're bedded here. And we can approach and hunt without alerting the deer. And if we're in a transition zone, they go by us or they didn't move that day or whatever happened, and we can get out without alerting deer. Now, I love what we call high-deal food plots, 40-yard, square circles, whatever. I'm not the guy of fancy shapes. I mean, deer smells you. It doesn't matter if it's an L shape, an hourglass, none of that. In the deer world, none of that matters. It makes a really good print, but none of that really matters, right? So I love little food sources in a staging area setup. They're going to that big food plot you drove by getting here. But really on that one, a couple different directions, 200 yards away, there's little 1/8 acre, whatever, 40 by 40 yard, whatever, high-deal food plots. We can't bow hunt effectively that big field, but we can sure sit on those high hills morning and afternoon. Deer out there all night long. We can't get there without alerting deer. We let them come to us, so we've cut cedars over here on a slope. Deer want to bed on a slope where the wind's going to swirl and they get 360 degree. And that's what Mark Drury calls architecture. We call it something else, but we want to design it where the deer have favorable feeding that we don't bother, favorable bedding we don't bother, and a way we can get in the middle without alerting deer. And if you're a public land hunter, you got to scout and find these things based on experience, time, talking to buddies, whatever.
No, I like that. And that's a good point, talking about the bedding on the ridge slopes with that swirling wind. It makes it super difficult. You almost, if you have your land that you're able to manipulate, you want to make the bedding as difficult for a predator to approach them, including you, because of wind conditions and swirling winds as possible. And the deer are probably going to pick that versus a big flat top ridge top or something like that.
The worst habitat plans you can come up with is trying to make this whole place huntable. I have a lot of clients. We serve, depending on the year, about 100 clients a year. Literally, we've worked New Zealand, but mainly from Florida to Canada, all over. We don't do much work west of the Rockies, but east of the Rockies to Maine, wherever we're there. And every geographic area has different hunting cultures and different theories they bought into. It kind of seems to be somewhat regional. And so sometimes we have to overcome those to really help the landowner. Here's a harsh one. The moon has nothing to do when deer move. I know that just, you just lost half your viewers. So much research on that. It's not disputable anymore, folks. It's not arguable. But there are certain places in America, I won't say where, that if you say that, you might as well figure you're getting punched in the nose. So we try really hard to say, let's put this in the deer's favor, but on your property on size, we're going to have 10 places that's absolutely in your favor. Not one, not two, because we need different wind directions. We like to have a minimum of 4 places where every hunter is going to hunt that property. North, south, east, west wind. And so if I say, well, me and my son-in-law and, my son are going to hunt this pretty regularly and then a few guests. Well, we got to have at least 12 stand locations. Because on any given Saturday that they're all off work, we don't know what the wind direction is going to be. And it may change between morning and afternoon. It's tough to make 12 good stand locations on a lot of properties. I mean, that's just tough.
But you said something important, that you're not trying to make the whole property huntable. You got to give the deer a location that they feel super comfortable in.
I'm trying to make the whole property deer friendly. And I know they need a Hampton Inn, right? They need cover that they're very comfortable in. And they need a Waffle House. They need food 24/7. All right? And then they need the interstate system. They need to get from point A to point B. And rather than pick their own interstate system, I'd rather develop it. So I know where it is and I can get there without alerting the deer.
So one question, and I do, Andrew, don't let me forget this. I want to talk about his favorite time to hunt, pre-rut, post-rut time frame. I do want to get in that conversation before we wrap up. But one question we get a lot from listeners that have access to property or they own property that's between, say, 40 to 80 acres.
Yep.
When you have a property that small, you're not holding deer.
Yep.
Deer are just kind of frequenting your property from your neighbors and everything. And I know there's so many different scenarios, and I know you deal with clients of all different sizes, and probably a lot of big clients, big landowners. What is the thought process when you are hunting and you have access and you own a smaller piece of property like that? How someone should approach just an overall 30,000 foot view of that property?
There's one rule that should never be violated. Now, we help a lot of 10 acre, 40 acre people. We help a lot of them. One of my favorites was, not to pick favorites, but there was a lady a couple years ago called. She had 40 acres in Pennsylvania. She was very successful, and I forgot whatever profession she was in. Very, very wealthy, very successful, and she wanted to get her own protein. For her, it was just about harvesting deer, and she chose a bow. What a delight to work with. Nothing about her being a lady. If you don't know me, I'm very family-oriented. She wanted to learn, and she wanted to do it right, and she did not have any preconceived notions. I didn't have to spend half the day wiping out, the old rumors, right? We could just get right to it. highly successful now in our hunting world, provide your own protein, all that stuff's great. You know. So if you have 40 acres, 80 acres, whatever, remember a deer's home range is highly variable. I travel all over. I got high school buddies that haven't left the county since we graduated high school. They're like deer. They're unique individuals, but on average, a mile, 2 miles, depending on where you are. Let's just throw that out. That's not a rule. That's the big average. So if you have 80, you're 1/8 of a deer's home range. If it's a mile, I think a lot of people don't put it in that scale. Look at it that way. You can expect that deer to be on your place on average 1/8 of the time. How do we increase that? How do we make that during daylight hours? So what we do, we focus like a laser on, we study out a mile in each direction. This is one of the things we're big on. Study out a minimum mile in each direction and figure out, okay, here's food, here's cover. We want to have the best food for sure in the neighborhood during hunting season. If we have 80 acres, we probably can't do it year round. During hunting season, we want the best food in the neighborhood on that property. We may have cover, we may not, depending on the habitat, but we definitely want the best food. And we need that in a way, again, we can approach up next without alerting those deer. And on 80 acres, depending on shape, that can be difficult. You know, the guy's driveway is on most places in America, the wind's coming out of west, southwest, something southwest. Just because of how the earth spins, we get a lot of west wind. Now, if you're by the ocean, big river, you may get a lot of east wind or something like that. You guys in Alabama, when I say by the ocean, you're a lot closer to the ocean than we are. So you have a lot more east wind, right? Because of the way that the warm air, cold water, all that stuff works. So if you're on the west, let's say Nebraska, where there's always a west wind, and your only access is from the west, and the neighbors on their side absolutely won't let you come that way, we're going to cut a trail right off the bat all the way around that property so we can never go in the center. We're going around the edge, as downwind as much as we can, and then penetrate in. We have a client, I won't mention names, he's super famous. Everyone of your listeners will know this person. Not in the hunting business, he probably doesn't want people to know he's a hunter. Has 1/2 section in Kansas. He's in a good neighborhood. And we made the inside of that like a beautiful painting of habitat. And then he's a gun hunter. His blinds are never more than 40 yards in. He never penetrates except to retrieve a deer or work on the food plots or whatever. During deer season, he never goes in that property more than 40 yards. And we worked out a neighbor where, we can come in from no matter what the wind is. So he's not hunting where his trail cameras are sending pictures. He's hunting from where the wind is good. And he's killed multiple 200-inch deer off that, multiple 200-inch plus deer off this 320 acres because it is designed right. And it's in a good neighborhood. We're not going to kill multiple 200-inch deer here no matter what we do. Because we're in the Ozarks. There's not enough groceries to grow those kind of antlers here. But you can make a difference. We grow 150-inch deer for clients in Florida. You can always do better. In the county we're in, this is off subject, county we're in, when we started 20 plus years ago, we bought land here because it's cheap and buy my home. If you're a deer biologist, no one wants to come to Branson, Missouri to hunt deer. No one comes here to hunt deer, right? You come here to go to theme parks or Bass Pro or play golf, beautiful golf courses. No one comes here to hunt deer. It's a horrible place to be a deer biologist. But it's happened to work well for me because I took a really rocky, burnt-out cattle ranch. This is how bad it was. I've never in my career walked a property that had more cattle skeletons on it than my place because they starved to death. The rancher didn't care. Literally. We started with that. A big deer was an 80-inch deer. That was a whopper. And we ended up, with the 170 plus. Genetics didn't change. The habitat changed. And the age structure changed. And you have, even on that property was pretty big, 1,500 acres, but that's not enough. It was long and skinny. I shared deer with my neighbors. And what helped that, and this is, I think, a real important lesson if you're bearing me this liberty. I had this 2-year-old 10-pointer, biggest deer we'd see on the property, like 5 years into it. I mean, this deer was going somewhere. And I'm working out of state, and my wife called me and said, one of my neighbors has shot a deer and wanted permission to trade it. Now, no one wants to do that, right? But it's the right thing to do. So I said, okay, can you go meet him at the fence and walk with him? And they did. He's a great neighbor, still friends, and couldn't find it. And I get home, and I want to go look, and I actually found the vultures, found it by the creek. And he'd made a shot on his land, blood trail clearly on his land, jump fence. And it was a 2-year-old, 80-inch, 10-point deer. And at first, of course, I was mad. That was my hope. That was my hope 2 years from now. So I cleaned up skull real good, cleaned up jawbone, and instead of being bitter about it, I said, this could be a teaching moment. And I got it all cleaned up, and I called that guy. I said, hey, you home? Yeah, I'm home. I drove around just several weeks later. I said, hey, I'm going to show you something. I go back to my truck, and first thing I do, I pick up the skull. And he's like, oh, man, because that was a big deer for him. Oh, man, look at that. That's so cool. Thanks for bringing that to me. I can't believe you did that. No one would do that. They'd nail it to their barn. They would not give it back. And I let that moment of hype get over. Then I pull out the jawbone. I said, let me show you something. Here's the average wear and tear of a teeth and, blah, blah, blah. And by that, this is a 2-year-old deer. And if you and me as neighbors let this get a little older, we can grow a lot bigger racks. And that's how it started in my neighborhood. That moment is how it started in my neighborhood. Not all neighbors have bought in by any stretch, but enough of them have that we're getting some older bucks.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we get a bunch of questions from guys who are hunting smaller properties like that. We'll just say sub 100 acres.
Yeah.
A lot of them are sub 20 acres.
Yeah.
And they'll ask, what can I do to see more deer on the property? And what can I do to have bigger deer on the property? And I feel like you've kind of already answered those questions, but I just wanted to touch on it specifically.
Yeah, let's do that. So you want the best food in the neighborhood, and you want the safest property from a deer point of view. If the day's not right, if you're limited to 20 acres and the day's not right, doggone it, you just aren't hunting, or you're hunting real close to the yard. I call that observation hunting. I'm hunting where I can see a long ways, but there's no chance I'm going to alert deer. I'm just trying to gain information. We do that on my property now. We have a larger property, and if the conditions are just horrible, and man, I got time, I just want to be out in the woods, then I'll go somewhere where I do not expect to see a deer, and I'm hunting with my binos way more than I am with my weapon. I'm just trying to get information. That's critical for smaller properties. And you cannot be alerting deer because deer have memory.
So, yeah, I had a guy the other day actually who I was responding to, and he had, I think it was 15 acres, and he sent me the map of it, how it lays out. And I mean, there just like really wasn't a lot to work with, but he was saying he had one stand that they really hunted. And he's like, what could I do to do this or that? And I was like, man, he was close to a big national forest. I was like, I go find you some spots in the national forest, and when you want to stretch your legs, when that stand isn't, when it's not right for that stand, I would go hunt that.
Yeah.
And leave that for the prime time. And like, I guess you really just have to go off what the property lends you. I mean,
yes,
because there's some properties that just aren't, going back to the stand conversation, you're just not going to have a lot of opportunities on some properties.
That's right. And you have to be realistic for the neighborhood you're in. You can make changes. We would have not had the progress. We wouldn't have made the progress we've made on a lot smaller, an 80-acre property. We just couldn't have enough impact on the neighborhood. We don't win them all. My neighbors send me pictures of really nice bucks they harvest. You don't win them all, which is fine. But you got to be realistic. And we have that all the time. When people ask, 10 acres, or hey, man, I want to kill 2 Bennet Crockett's this year. I'm like, well, I hope you draw Iowa. Because they ain't happening on that 10 acres most likely. So and I think it's real important that if your goals are unrealistic, you're not going to be a happy hunter. You're just not. That's no way to live. So have realistic goals. My goals when I'm hunting with buddies on public land are way different than here. I'm just having a good time. Hope we get some shots in on something that's legal, have some fun. There's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, I think we went too far the other way. I believe there's too much big buck mania. And maybe I was part of the problem early on in my career, I don't know. But hunting needs to be about the enjoyment and providing high quality protein for our family. Really. Antlers are a byproduct. And that's how it used to be. The old buck Poe and, whoever killed the big buck, whatever kind of the hero that year, whatever. There were a few hunters that stood out. And the hunting culture is something we got to hold on to like it's our last breath. Because it could slide real easy. We're at some critical crossroads right now.
Yeah, I agree.
That's way off subject, but it's a real important message. So on that, we've been working with Dr. Stefan Van Vliet, one of the world's leading human nutritionists. He done this look at protein and fat and, stuff like that. He'd test about 500 different phytonutrients, phyto, sunlight, photography, phyto, that deer, of course, herbivores eating plants. They can get these nutrients from plants. And only through a rumen, a monogastric, a chicken, a pig or something that doesn't have 4 chambers in their stomach can't do this. Put it in the meat. And deer narrow muzzle. Think of an elk, big old muzzle. Just give me grass. I'm happy. Buffalo, great big old muzzle. Just give me grass. Cow, just give me grass. Deer are very selective eaters. They don't have the same microbes in their gut. They can't digest grass very well. They're forb eaters. Forbs are much ragweed, stuff like that, broadleaf plants, much more nutritious than grass. Deer are the perfect, I'm going to show you this in just a second, the perfect way to convert plant nutrition to human nutrition. You know, my buddy might say, man, I had salad today. I feel so healthy. Man, I had 6 different things in it. So that's great, man. I had venison for lunch, and that deer probably ate over 150 plants today before I killed it. I ate way healthier than you did. Now, I'm a 2-time kidney transplant patient. I'm very rare. I'm rarer than a 200-inch buck in the Ozarks. I've had a transplant for 35 years. Not many of us live 35 years. And I've been blessed by God, unequivocally. But a big part of my health has been, I was a poor graduate student, and I just like venison. I still eat venison. I eat primarily venison. I do my health care at the Mayo Clinic. And every year I meet a dietitian. They say, hey, what are you eating, Grant? You know, got to keep my weight down so I'm not working that kidney hard or stuff like that. So I primarily eat wild venison. Can't put anything better in your body. But Dr. Van Vliet, we were introduced by a mutual friend, had found that wild-caught salmon was the healthiest meat you could put in the human body. You can live on wild-caught salmon. Some of the Inuits and stuff do. Just wild-caught salmon, day after day after day after day after day. Pretty cool. He was doing some work in Hawaii and said, I don't know, man. I feel pretty good I ate these axis deer. Axis deer are not native to Hawaii. They were brought by European settlers way back in the day, Captain Cook, people like that. Let loose. They're a pest now. Eat up native vegetation, stomp on the bird nest, stuff like that. They gave him some axis deer to test. It was healthier than wild-caught salmon. I said, them axis deer got a big old fat mouth, man. Let me send you some whitetails. So we send him portions of 17 loins, that hurt, and livers from deer harvested here. Pretty good native habitat. Minimal herbicide use, no synthetic fertilizer use, stuff like that. Healthiest meat he's ever tested. Let that one sink in. You want to be a hero to your family? With this new healthcare craze and JFK telling us not to put these dyes and stuff in our body, be a hunter. Shoot some does. Bring that meat home. Some of the healthiest food, and this varies a little bit depending on the habitat of the deer, right? Here's a little side tip for you. A deer killed early season will be healthier meat than an acorn-fed deer. Acorns aren't that good. And we were looking, because we seen the dates, this deer was harvested this, and said, why are these deer different here than these deer here? And there's actually Daniel, we're sitting around my desk in a conference call with Dr. Van Vliet. I said, well, those are late season deer. And we open the rumen, the gut, on every deer we kill. We call that scouting from the skin shed. And if you're really good at scouting from the skin shed, you go up the esophagus, right? Because we know about how long deer moves back down. Now, it regurgitates, but that's going to be chewed up, look different, right? Oh, there's a mushroom right here. They ate that mushroom 5 minutes from my stand. White oaks here. Red oaks here. Belly full of X. Yeah, I see the lights going on. Scouting from the skinning shed. We've been using that technique for years. It's messy. A lot of people don't want to do it. But, man, you talk about getting current, real information on the property. You just show up to deer camp. You don't really know where to hunt. Your buddy just killed a deer. You're going to learn a lot.
You're speaking my language with all this. That's fascinating. And we try to feed our 2-year-old a lot of deer meat for that exact reason, and she loves it. Talk about the esophagus. I've heard scouting from the skin and shed, but it's always looking at what's in the stomach. I have not heard of the esophagus.
So food can move down pretty quickly. This is not 100% pure, but I mean, you find the last 4 bites were a mushroom or big white oak acorns. You know where they were before they got to you. I'm just trying to get all the data I can.
Interesting.
I mean, if you open up here in the Ozarks, you know, and you're in November and you open up the rumen, it's probably brown full of acorns. But what species of acorns are they? Hard to say unless you start swimming around that rumen. So right outside my office window here is where we skin deer, have a winch and all that stuff. We bring them in whole because we collect a lot of data. It's hard to collect all the data out in the field and stuff, you know. And then we go to our quote-unquote gut pile, the coyote hunting place, and we pop open that rumen so we don't get everything messy right here and get in it and dig in there, see what's going on. It's amazing what you find.
Well, just on that topic, What's the most amazing thing or most interesting thing you've seen them eat that you weren't maybe expecting?
Little snake.
Really? Okay.
It was odd. I'm not saying deer eat snake.
Yeah.
Do not, folks. Do not. Every now and then humans put stupid stuff in their mouth, and apparently deer do too. I don't know.
Well, there's videos out there on a lot of, like, especially does grabbing a little
Like a
finch
baby
bird,
bird.
or a bird, or I've seen one chewing on a snake before down in Texas, but that's fair. That's not what I was expecting.
I think there's some mineral or something, or deer are very sensitive eaters, or something they need at that moment. Who knows what happened?
Real quick, I do want to touch on, earlier on we were talking about you really like pre-rut, and then you also really like post-rut or late rut. Can you give us you've talked a little bit about the pre-rut, but maybe just to go back to it. Pre-rut, what are you focusing on, the setup, your approach for pre-rut, and then how does that differ from post-rut?
So pre-rut, bucks are still on that food cover pattern, but they're probably moving more minutes during daylight hours. So I'm probably hunting a high-yield food plot, or if there's acorns on the ground, time acorns, because deer are going to abandon food plots if there's good acorns on the ground for the most part. We're always talking odds. And I'm hunting in an area where I know there's a lot of does. Just knowing the property, seeing signs, trail cameras, whatever. That's my pre-rut. I'm not hunting rut corridors or anything like that. That's just not, you might see a deer there, your buddy might, but that's rare. Yeah, early doe receptive buck chasing her. I don't blind grunt a lot unless I've got something on my back, a railroad track, a highway, or something where deer can't get behind me. Because deer want to circle down and winter that grunt before they run in there and get beat up. So I don't blind grunt a lot. And when I do grunt, which is a big tool, I always have a grunt call with me, always, but especially during the pre-rut. I don't just see a deer out of range and hit it. I'm thinking, what's that approach going to be? I may have to let him get out of view, so he will then most likely come with the right wind where he won't pick me up. Don't just grunt when you see a deer. They're often going to win you before they get there. Post-rut is some negatives. There's less bucks. They've died. They've been killed by a hunter. There's unequivocally less bucks during the post-rut than pre-rut unless you're hunting a really special property. Deer are more alert. Been a lot more hunting pressure. All these things, your stands have been, maybe you've been busted out of, whatever. But they're hungry. Bucks got to gain calories after that rut. They are hungry. And they're going to the best food source that they do not associate with pressure in their neighborhood. So we have a lot of high-yield food plots on the property, and we may intentionally not hunt some. You get a trail camera picture there, you go, man, I want to hunt there so bad. But that's traditionally a great late winter place, and you don't want a bust deer there. So having the best food source in the neighborhood during the post-rut, that is not associated with danger, is dynamite. And then a big doe harvest. Big doe harvest. We start shooting does. Season opens here September 15th. We try to kill does September 15th. A, to meet our quota. B, those fawns will survive by then. No problem, folks. That's why the state has the season open. And there's always the odd late fawn or something, but managed by the average is not the exception. If you've got female fawns that don't have mom protecting them, again, they're pouring into those late season food plots. And some of them are going to become receptive. And that's a magnet. It's better than the rut. I promise you. We've got a series of trail camera pictures here with this female fawn. It's classical. This is using anthropomorphic or putting human thoughts on deer. This female fawn, just dumb as a rock, runs out middle of a high-yield food plot, 300 yards that way from where we're sitting right now. And then a young buck shows up. Anyway, over 6 or 7 minutes of trail camera video, 5 different bucks in there. 2 big bucks are fighting. And the does just stand there looking at the female fawn just like, are you guys ever going to pay attention to me? That's what it looks like she's thinking. And literally these bucks are just circling each other. And 2 of them are good-sized bucks, shooter bucks, fighting for the rights to go tend this doe. So that post-rut strategy, and it sounds simple because my world is pretty simple, but I want the best food that they don't associate with danger. And it helps if you have a lot of female fawns that mom's not protecting them.
I've heard that where if you shoot a doe that's got fawns, those fawns will usually stay right where that home range was. So you found that to be true?
Yeah, well, that comes from Stephen Holzenbein. He was a grad student at Georgia when I was there from Germany. Very, very smart, very, very smart. And he went to Front Royal, which is a National Zoo Research Center by Shenandoah Valley. And they captured, and this is decades ago, but I'm pretty sure this is right, they had 20 does that had button-buck fawns for sure. And come weaning time, they went out under permit and killed 10 of those does. And then had those bucks back in the day fitted with radio collars and followed them until they were, I remember, 2 years old or something like that. And after the first year and a half, right, which group? You have 10 that have mom and 10 that don't. Which group you think had the most survivors?
The one that had mom?
That's logical because we're thinking like a human. But it's just the opposite, because if they had a mom, she'd bite, kick, stomp, whatever, and he's going to go to a different home range. He don't know where the hunting stands are, the coyote dens are, the roads are, and he's going to die. Year and a half old bucks are teenage boys. They're dumb as a rock. I was one too. I'm not talking anyone down. But the ones where the doe was harvested tend to stay in that home range like you're talking about. And mom has taught them where the coyote dens are and the bears are and the hunting stands are and whatever. And they got a better chance of survival in that research study. That's one research study, but in that study, the data was very clear. And I do know this from practical experience on a lot of properties that if we have usually my clients and us, we have a bigger doe harvest than the neighbors. Usually, there's some areas we don't need a big doe harvest, but a lot of areas need a pretty good doe harvest. So if you're harvesting does and you're button bucks, more of them than not are staying home, and your neighbors aren't harvesting does and their button bucks are all dispersing, not dispersing in every direction, but some percentage of them's going your way, you can really amp up that buck population. Really high. And that's so fun. When you rattle, when you grunt, at the right time of year, you're going to see critters. May not be a shooter, may not come in range, but you're going to see critters.
One thing about those doe fawns coming to heat, some people are going to think, listeners, viewers, is that what some people would call a secondary rut? Or like, how would you classify that?
Yeah.
And what is your thoughts on that term, secondary rut, that so many people talk about, especially in the Southeast?
I think it's a little bit of a misnomer. In general, the rut's always going to be a bell-shaped curve. And that shape of the curve can be really steep and a really tuned-up deer herd, which is what we want. All the does come receptive early. That way, remember, hunters are thinking about the rut. I'm thinking about when the fawn's hitting the ground, 200 days later. So if you've got a real strung out, real flat bell-shaped curve, some of those fawns are hitting the ground real late. In the north, they won't survive because they don't have body weight to survive the cold. Elephants have huge ears to shed heat, right? Not to fan and get heat. There's like a radiator, all these blood vessels in there, and they're just shedding heat like crazy. So if you got a little female fawn who's that big around and it gets cold, that heat's just going away and they're going to freeze to death, period. In the South, you don't have that. So you can get a real strung out rut and all these funky breeding dates and everything like that. So I want a really dense, I want a 1-to-1 adult sex ratio. Let's go here a second. When I was finishing my PhDs, and now I'm on the other side of the desk, I know this. They know what you know. Your professors know what you know. That's just torture time. They already know whether you're going to pass or not. Again, I've been on both sides of the desk now. So I walk into Dr. Gwynn, my PhD professor, but Larry Marson, Carl Miller, there's other brilliant people on my committee. I mean, it's going to be painful, you know. And you do writtens at Clemson, you do writtens first, and they'll give you just like 5 or 6 questions. Doesn't seem like much. I wrote 70 pages to answer 5 questions. One of my questions was, what was the demographics, the sex ratio and the age structure of white-tailed deer pre-European settlement? I instantly started crying and go, they want me to fail. No one has this answer. There is no written record nationwide of the sex ratio and age structure of white-tailed deer pre-European settlement. And Gwynn kindly, Dr. Gwynn said, you just think about it. I got faith in you, and I'll see you in a month. You get a month answer. So when you don't know, you're in grad school and you don't know, you go to the library. Now you go to the internet. Back in the day, you went to the library. So I go to the library and start digging, and God bless me, I found this paper from archaeologists that had found an Indian midden. Midden is fancy now, but back in the day, that was just trash heap. They throw the trash they didn't use outside the camp and throw some dirt on it every now and then so it didn't stink, and then pour some more trash, put some more dirt on there. Becomes a big mound. Native Americans much more practical than we are. And they had dug out these middens, and they'd found a whole bunch of deer pelvic girdles, because there wasn't much use for the pelvic girdle. And from a pelvic girdle, you can sex a deer almost 100% accurately, and you can get a pretty accurate estimate of the age. Well, I found another. And I ended up finding these studies from Florida to North Dakota. I found the records of about 10,000 pelvic girdles. And I was able to reconstruct the sex ratio and age structure of the whitetail deer herd pre-European settlement. Whether my professors knew I'd find this data or not is still questionable. I think they were just curious what it was. Well, we'll make Grant do the research. We don't want to do that research. We'll make Grant do the research. Now, this is a little biased because a fawn, a really young fawn, remember, Native Americans hunting deer year round. There wasn't no season. Mama wanted a new, set of moccasins. We need some meat. They're just hunting. So a really young fawn's pelvic girdle is not calcified yet, and they're probably decomposed because that age class was horribly underrepresented. Calcium doesn't break down, but if it's just born flat, So anyway, but the sex ratio was 50-50. No state in America right now manages deer as well as the Native Americans. Native Americans weren't managing. That's hogwash. Don't believe all those old books, right? Bambi, all that stuff. They were just shooting the deers closest to them. Average shot is published. I do not know this. Is not my field of research. Was about 7 yards with their crude bows. They stalked within 7 yards. When you don't take a bath very often, you don't smell like a human. They were able to get close. Okay? I wouldn't suggest that if you're married. Don't try it as a hunting technique. And the average age structure was over 3.5 years old. This was from Florida to North Dakota. Because they were just killing the deer that was close to them. And a lot of bucks survived to get old. Why does Kentucky have such great deer? Because it's a statewide 1 buck limit. A lot of deer survived that. Why does Iowa do this? Well, it's about impossible. You've got a couple for non-residents get tagged. Some residents get 3 buck tags, but a lot of bucks get old. A lot of bucks get old. It doesn't matter if you're in Iowa, you're not half a buck can only be so big. So that was great research to let me know the importance of age structure, and we can do it. And we can do this several ways. Harvesting more does our neighbors, getting a few more button bucks in is just one tool. We can have the best resources in the neighborhood. We want to find that limited resource. We look at the neighborhood and it's all soybean fields. We don't want more soybean fields. We want food during the hunting season. When those are harvested, the deer are coming to us. Maybe there's no cover, which is common in Iowa and these big ag states. We want to focus on cover because that's the most limited resource. During hunting season, when they're standing corn, there's cover everywhere. Once that's harvested and you've got the cover, you own the deer in that scenario. So from a management point of view, provide the most limited resource in that deer's home range. From a hunting point of view, it's all about knowing where deer are going, getting in between that without alerting deer. It is literally that simple, and you'll be successful over and over. I want to share one last thing on that. I had this friend, he's passed. I'm not going to mention his name. Best hunter I've ever been around. No one knows him, and never on TV or anything. Best hunter I've ever known. I was in South Carolina grad school. He'd kill 15 bucks a year with an old bow and a homemade climbing tree stand made out of conduit pipe. I'm surprised he didn't fall to his death. And he's scared of heights. I could literally lay my bow on his stand every time I found it. Great guy, but kind of secretive about his hunting, so I would scout him. And he was a trained smoker. And I'd find his stand. His stand wouldn't be there. There'd be a ring halfway around a pine tree of cigarette butts. Didn't register at the time. And one time I loaned him some of my hunting equipment and he lost it for like a year in his truck. He was kind of messy. And he called me, I found what, I don't remember what it was now. And I got it back and I couldn't keep it because it reeked of cigarette smoke horribly. He did not smell like a human. Now he died of cancer, literally, but he did not smell like a human and he never cared about the wind. I asked him, how do you hunt these places? He hunt bottoms, he hunt side ridges. He did not smell like a human. It's not worth dying over, folks. And it's got to be inside, not just somebody spray on you. It permeates your whole body. He was the best, killed the most bucks, 3-year-old bucks, bunches of 3-year-old bucks, was doing some at that day in South Carolina. Over and over and over and over again. Tremendous hunter. But he did not have to worry about the wind.
That's fascinating. I've heard similar things of like, if you really want to cover your scent, you need to just eat vegetables and sit in a sweat lodge for 2 weeks, which I'm not willing to do. I'm just going to play the wind.
I don't think that matters at all.
Yeah.
You smell like a human either way. Remember, the worst thing you can do, and it's hard for me not to do, is eat a Snickers bar on a stand. Because sugar just makes bacteria in your mouth multiply like crazy. Don't eat sugar before or during the hunt, not because it makes your whole body smell different, just makes you have bad breath. And remember, if in an ideal world, we'd wear some kind of carbon mask and we only exhale through this carbon. No one's going to do that. Don't try to make a new hunting product out of that. No one's going to do that. But that would be awesome.
Yeah. Grant, we're running short on time, and there's one question I just have to ask you, and that is, with your business, like you've gone from Proving Grounds 1.0 to 2.0. You've been really successful. You've done a really good job with it. Why do you do it in the Ozarks and not in Iowa or somewhere like that?
Land was cheap here back in the day. When Tracy and I bought the first property, we had no money. We actually offered about 1/10 of what they were selling it for. A guy had died, this rancher had died, left it to a hospital. And they first sent us a really nasty letter, no, and 9/11 happened, and they decided, I guess they needed funds. They said, your offer's still good. That's how God got us here. Now, the Ozarks, family's first for me, literally. The Ozarks are a great place to raise kids. It's kind of a clean cut. I mean, there's drugs here and whatnot, but not like other places. It's clean cut, pretty safe place to raise kids compared to other places. It's beautiful. And I've come to learn that I can grow good deer. I call 170 a good deer. Well, I call 150 a good deer. Anywhere. Literally anywhere. It takes years. It takes time. It takes chainsaws usually in timber country and not a big budget, but it takes a lot of work. You heard some chainsaws, but I saw some when you were driving in. We're cutting more cedars a day. I mean, we just keep cutting, putting sunlight to the ground. So that's why we're here, those reasons. There's no magic. And there was never any design going on. I mean, growing deer was an afterthought. I started my career. We've been incorporated this week or next week, we've been incorporated 35 years. That's a pretty long run. And we were a consultant for the first 20 plus years, something like that. And we started growing deer because my youngest daughter at the time, my oldest daughter at the time, I come home from consulting, I'd missed a flight, and I get there like at 11 o'clock next morning. You guys have done this. And my daughter says, let's play ball. So we're set down floor, split legged like the dad, so the ball won't get away. And the phone rings. As soon as the phone rings, my daughter said, Daddy. Because that's how she knew me. And it crushed me. And I said, I've got to change my life. I can go back and teach at a university, which I didn't want to do. Why give up all this fun to put up with those politics? Or I can share information some other way. And that's where growing deer started. Redneck as it could be, buddy. I called a buddy of mine. I'd been with Mossy Oak. I started a little company called Biologics many years ago, sold my shares out to Toxie, still friends. So I'd been around cameras. I'd done all their conservation minutes. If you watched Mossy Oak back in the day, I can't remember what Cuz called it, but we always had some conservation minute in each show. And then I did all the conservation stuff for Bass Pro. They used to have a TV show, and I did all the conservation stuff for them. So I'd been in front of a camera, but never behind the camera. Bubba. We didn't know what we were doing at all. And I called a friend, hey, what cameras get? Back in the day, they were big and bulky and horrible and cost a lot of money. And somehow God blessed us, and we struggled through. We were early on the net, so there wasn't a lot of competition. I think Bill Winke was the only hunting type show before us on the web. So it wasn't much competition. We'd have failed if we'd have started now trying to beat guys like you. We'd have never made it. So just God put us in the right place, right time. And I'm a teacher at heart. You may have figured that out. I like sharing information. I don't have secrets. I'll tell you whatever I can tell you to help you. So growing deer has just been a good tool to do that. And God blessed us, and sponsors come alongside us. A lot of them been there 10, 12, 15 years and just stayed with us.
We all do a great job with it. And like I was saying, I started watching it when I was really trying to learn more about deer years ago. And man, you just taught me so much. I mean, I learned what a glade was from you. I learned about the pelvic girdle from you. I learned about the hidey hole food plots. I mean, you name it. There was a lot of really valuable information that I wasn't getting elsewhere that I was able to get from Growing Deer TV. So y'all do a great job.
Well, thank you. We're educators that like to hunt, and it's really all the staff. You talk about y'all doing the editing. I could not edit anything. They don't even let me in that room. So it's really, truly a team effort. And really been blessed with people that have the same passion and better skills than I have, and it's been easy for us.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Grant, thank you so much for letting us come in and spend some time with you today. Sit down, have some great conversations. There's a lot of other questions I have, so maybe at some point in the future, you'll let us come back to do another one with you. But again, we appreciate your time and appreciate, again, you being willing to share so much information to the masses, because at this day and age with technology, so many people are so hungry for more information, and there truly isn't enough, because now at this point in our space that we live in, you can find something for everybody, no matter what level they're on when it comes to the outdoors and what they're looking for. So again, appreciate you being a great resource for that over the years and still today.
No, you're kind to say that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for what you all do.
Appreciate that. It feels weird when people say that. We appreciate that. For all the listeners out there, all the viewers, thank y'all for watching and listening. We'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsmen podcast. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.